screen will be for us there?
It's just for reference, really, because I mean, we can see each other, but this is what everybody else sees essentially.
What is currently on the screen?
Yeah.
In TV.
So we're live, but not live on the event. So that's why as soon as I click here, now we're going to actually go live. Hello, everybody. I'm Kevin Mirko, CEO here at CoinMetro. This is our second in a series of live interviews that we're doing direct from our offices. Well, some may be virtual, but these first two are definitely live direct from our offices. I'm going to go ahead and introduce our guest. We're going to get right into it, start talking about the topic. Remember, best question wins 1,000 XCM, 1,000 native CoinMetro tokens. Make sure you start sending your questions, whether it be through the live event that you're watching on Facebook or through Twitter or through YouTube if you happen to be on those channels. And we're going to go at some point throughout the show, we're going to start answering your questions. And the one we find that we think was the best is going to get rewarded. So make sure you shoot through your questions. So Reimo Hammerberg, representing Ignium today. Go ahead and introduce yourself.
Thanks, Kevin. Hi, everyone. My name is Reimo Hammerberg, and I'm the co-founder of Ignium. It's a company enabling issuance of security tokens, instantaneous settlement, and providing secondary market. In other words, providing the entire infrastructure for the purpose of security tokens. Before that, we founded Ignium a little more than 1 year ago. I've been practicing financing and capital markets law for the last 20 years. So the legal practice has been pretty much what I've been doing, and the work has actually brought me to the issues what I'm trying to tackle also with Ignium. That is the fragmentation of the capital markets, how really investors and the companies could get access to one another and really, make business together. And this is what I saw, especially in the small market like Estonia, in the course of my practice, and then moved away from the law practice entirely this year, and now dedicated fully to bringing Ignium something big.
So the joke between Reimo and I is that he used to wear ties and now he's left. The tie's gone, so he's stepping into the startup role. We're going to get him into a t-shirt before the end of 2021. That's the goal on our side. So today's topic, as you can see at the bottom of the screen, future of STOs. Will EU lead the future of tokenization? So we're gonna have a discussion. This is how this works. It's not necessarily an interview. It's more of a discussion. I'm going to pose something to start off the discussion. We're just going to go back and forth. If you guys have questions throughout this entirety, like I said, start posting them. If something comes up that we feel is part of the immediate discussion, we may answer it on the fly. If not, when we get to the end in the next 20, 25 minutes, we'll start to look at those questions and answer them. Like I said, best one wins 1,000 XCM. And if you're viewing for the first time one of these shows, just so that you know, we're not wearing masks. We are practicing a little bit of social distancing. But we're not wearing masks because Estonia is actually the lowest in Europe in terms of the infection rate right now. So we're pretty safe here, just so people don't freak out. We're not like anti-maskers or something. Okay, so Reimo, future of tokenization. So we've obviously in both companies, CoinMetro and Ignium, are starting to deal with this tokenization kind of phenomenon. We've been seeing lots and lots of news in the media. STOs we saw maybe even more news about STOs following the ICO bubble. But in the last, I would say, year or so, it's really started to concentrate. We're seeing more and more. I think just like people had a misconception on ICOs, people tend to have a misconception about tokenization, that perhaps they overthink it, underthink it. So do you feel the same way? And if you do, where do you think that misconception lies? And how would you explain?
So the question for me is tokenization is really about technology, and what can really tokenization do? Tokenization in itself, for me, I'm not a tech expert, and it's surprising actually to me where we are currently and what kind of discussion we are having. For a tech company like CoinMetro, and inviting me for the interview and asking for something which is not law. But really, tokenization for me, it's part of something being dematerialized. So I see that tokenization being a huge impact for security space where things are still done on paper. So then really, because you take something which is done still old-fashioned way, paper and pen, and then dematerialize that, digitize that. But for the places where you already have dematerialized securities, and most of Europe is that already. And in that case, the blockchain really, the mere tokenization is no magic whip in my opinion. Because what does it do? It does provide this, this better structure for the database. It's all more, secure, immutable, and this, as it's called, the killing feature of the blockchain. You kind of combine the best features of the physical life and the virtual life together, and you get something, which is, the best of both, so to speak. It's kind of a no double spending and so forth. But in itself, as far as the capital markets are concerned, so the problem really there, often what is spoken is you tokenize and you get the liquidity. And which is, really unclear for me how a mere tokenization can lead to liquidity. See, because liquidity happens when you have sufficient buyers, willing buyers and willing sellers, and there are many of them. So how can a mere tokenization create that? Still, the people must be able to meet. People must be able to interact. And that is what it is, in my opinion. Unless you have created that, and that is not a technology problem. That is operational or business model problem. So unless you create that, somehow you enable all the people across the globe to start interacting, mingling for the purpose of trading. And if you could do that with the help of blockchain, yes, that then blockchain or tokenization would really do the trick, but not before that.
So you mentioned obviously getting questions on tech instead of legal. So is there also misconceptions on the legal side, i.e. that tokenization requires some type of specific effort, or it's vastly different from, let's say if you're going to launch some type of tokenized security, whether it be an equity, whether it be a bond, convertible, is there a vast difference between, obviously speaking, let's say in the EU particularly, or in Estonia particularly, is there a vast difference between doing that the traditional way versus doing it the tokenized way? Is that also maybe falls under, is there another misconception that may happen in the, let's say in the public, or people you have spoken to that tend to think one is vastly different from the other, or are they vastly different from one another?
Well, starting really first, are they different in the first place? In my opinion, there are differences, if you take really from the regulatory perspective. First, you issue the security, you should publish the prospectus. As far as prospectus is concerned, there are no fundamental differences, but there are some differences, because in the prospectus where you describe what your security is about, what your issuer is about, you also explain how you should subscribe to the securities and how they are settled, how the register is kept, and so forth. So it brings you to the issue of infrastructure, and the infrastructure is different when you speak about DLT or blockchain. So there are some differences, but they are not fundamental. So further on, when you go to the infrastructure, then when things start to get different, right? Because the current incumbent infrastructure providers, such as exchanges, depositories, they, as you well know, they are not capable of supporting DLT securities. And that's when you start to run into practical issues. Okay, I do my nice security. Yes, I get it issued, but where it's going to be listed, where it's going to be, held in custody, where it's going to be settled, and so forth and so forth. All those practical issues, which are not really legal issues, but they touch upon the legal issues.
We're lacking infrastructure.
Yes, we're lacking infrastructure, but it's in terms of law, in a broader sense, I would say nothing would stop you from issuing digital securities.
And I think that is definitely a misconception. I know I've talked to many people and I guess, as most things do, over time, people start to kind of remedy their miseducation. So they start to find actual information. But I talked to lots of blockchain lawyers over the years that had varied opinions on that, how it was so much more complex to issue, let's say an STO, or that it had, that there had to be some compliance token, and that special things had to happen, and magic needed to happen behind the scenes, or it was impossible. And I think
people usually do magic when they don't understand what they talk about. That's when magic comes into play.
Yeah. That's a good point. I knew a magician once. He didn't know what he's talking about. That's for sure. So back to the topic. Let's say back to the topic at hand in terms of EU. So is there something that's happening in the EU, or has there been talks about what's going on in the EU that would lead us to believe that the EU is going to take a leap forward or a step forward in kind of leading this digitization, tokenization push?
There is though, and while Americans are making jokes of Europeans all the time that we are slow and you're not.
I never make them.
Yeah, of course, because you're Mexican.
Yeah, exactly.
But jokes aside, indeed, there is a major legislative initiative in EU which actually addresses two topics. And those two topics are, first of all, DLT infrastructure, that is depositories, which settlement systems, and trading venues, where the liquidity actually happens. And specifically designating and addressing the pain points currently in the regulation, which prohibit or prevent you from running a settlement system and trading venue on DLT. So this new regulation is currently a draft regulation. It was just published in the end of September. And then another piece is on cryptocurrencies. I wouldn't go there that much, but those two things together actually show EU's kind of a major willingness, because the form of legislation is not really a soft law, or it's not kind of a regulatory guidance or anything like that. It's a regulation which in EU means, if you call EU a federation, which would be fair to call, it's like federation, it's a directly applicable regulation across the federation. So it's something like you would have a securities laws in US. We would have something like that applicable to all member states. So it's a draft law currently. It's expected to come into a real law maybe in 1-2 years' time. And it sets a pilot framework for the existing settlement systems and trading venues, that they could run really their DLT-based systems. So it's a major step. But whether it will change actually anything, it does, I have to say, in my opinion, it does address the main pain points and actually addresses the pain points really well. I mean, for example, takes away the requirement that settlement system needs to have intermediaries. All intermediaries go away. Every trading venue can start doing their own settlement system based on DLT, becoming the settlement hub themselves. Whether it's a good thing or bad thing for the market, time will figure, right? But in general, it's a good piece of law. Now the next trick is to pass it, to make it a law.
The magic.
Right? The magic. And then the next step from it will be that will the market participants, the existing ones, to embrace, because let's get real, challengers like us at Ignium, we will not be eligible to use that. Because first, you need to have a real license of a settlement system or CSD or a trading venue, and only then you can apply for this exemption. We simply, run on this unregulated space, which we believe is best for us currently. But as far as the scene is set, and hopefully the other initiatives will follow, regulatory guidances, and hopefully the willingness of the regulators as well to look very openly at this. Because one thing is the piece of regulation. Yeah, you can read black and white, and as I said, it's a decent piece of regulation. People have really been giving a good thought.
Is there some specific person or group or lobby group or something behind it, or is it something that just kind of formed in Parliament and kind of made its way?
I think the way it's kind of, it doesn't really, the EU lawmaking is it goes through the Parliament and Council, and that's the way it goes. But usually, I believe the big lobbying groups actually behind there are the existing incumbent CSDs and trading venues. And if you think of them, Clearstream, Euroclear, Nasdaq is small actually in Europe, but most of the CSDs or settlement systems in Europe, not most, many of them are partially government owned. So there's a big lobbying power behind that. Okay. So that's what shows this step forward. But another part of this, behind this law, could be actually that the regulators now in each member state, they have to take a more willing view to this new technology. And another big impact or soft impact could be a side effect for that, could be that it becomes more mainstream. Because the big issue you hear all the time, there will not be breakthrough of DLT, there will not be breakthrough of cryptocurrencies unless the institutionals will embrace or you break through to the mainstream finance. And that's what this new piece of legislation actually designates, in my opinion. So in many ways, it's a major piece of legislation, governments involved, regulators involved, and the incumbent market participants involved.
So you mentioned infrastructure, need for infrastructure. So how does Ignium fit into that need for infrastructure? What is the game plan to potentially, I guess, solve that pain point?
Right. Those come the minutes of advertisement. I
Yeah.
understand. Okay. I should have put my tie on.
No. T-shirt, please.
T-shirt on. But yes, well, that is a very core what we are addressing. Because that's where we see the big pain point, lack of liquidity. We started from the very kind of from a simple standpoint, lack of liquidity, lack of connectivity.
Yeah.
So how do we resolve that? And we created this system, right? We created a system which exactly, as far as tech or operational features are concerned, matches exactly what is designed by this new regulation. So that's why I'm saying the new regulation is good in my opinion. But we are tackling exactly the same issue, but we are in an unregulated space, and rightfully so currently. Because, as the new regulation designates, this operational model, functionality that we have chosen, connecting issuers and investors directly, and investors to one another directly without any intermediaries, doing it all on chain. It's unregulated model in EU currently. It is not unregulated in the other parts of the world. For example, US would require certain kind of licensing, and the same probably in Asia. But in EU, luckily for us, being a very big and wealthy market, enables us to operate without the license.
Do you see a point in the future where maybe we get some type of global or dynamic regulatory kind of footprint where you're not susceptible to very different, let's say, very different regulations between maybe one country and another? Do you see any possibility of that in the future? Maybe because of the fact that these technologies now start to allow for different types of transactions and different settlement methodologies that potentially reduce so much the risk that at the end of the day, the onerous regulation in some jurisdictions maybe isn't needed, and they start to kind of meld it together.
That would be beautiful, wouldn't it? I mean, it's
amazing.
Amazing, yes. Because, what the blockchain itself is a good kicker or a good starter for this, making the global capital markets. Because let's get real, we could have easily done it the same with the old school database structure. As far as operational it's concerned, but now it's simply the new database structure, new technology gives us the kick that let's finally complete the mission of markets becoming global.
Yeah.
And from the moment you start speaking about truly global markets, there are many sets of regulations which should become global. At some point of time, of course, let's go fast forward. Imagine really that it's kind of you get by all those standards and everybody agrees upon the global standard of the blockchain, which is used for the settlement systems.
Yeah.
Then it could be actually that it's one big, one chain, all running on chain.
Yeah.
There will be no need for companies like us, for example.
One standard.
One standard, and it's kind of, indeed, it's all settled there. I don't know, the governance is handled, maybe automated through the smart contracts, but we're many years away, because what that presumes, all those different chains which are, being developed currently. First of all, the chain must be able real-time settlement.
Yeah.
Trade is happening, settlement instantaneous. So how do you resolve all that through distributed ledger? That's the first challenge. Say somebody figures it out.
Yeah.
Will even any government embrace that technology? Will the next government? Even if one federation embraces that, what about given the political debate between the different countries and international treaties, how difficult it is to negotiate even trade agreements, then agreeing on something as fundamental as this. So we are, I believe, many years away, but at some point of time, it's a great vision, right? With what we could have.
Yeah, I guess no matter how streamlined you make the system, you still have to deal with the law, the regulation, the legislation, etc. Right? There's no magic around that, at least not yet. If someone comes up with that magic, then that
person probably must change the human nature as well.
yeah. a super magician, I guess, wizard, I guess we'd call that person. So we heard a bit about Ignium, kind of what it does from a high level. What about, I mean, obviously we're sitting here kind of in a discussion, a little bit something like an interview. So what kind of highlights does Ignium have from, like, is there something Ignium wants to share in terms of some progress it's made, maybe some breakthroughs, something? What's new on the horizon for Ignium?
Yeah, its journey's been short, as you know, right? It's started off really, summer last year, and but it's been a very good. We've been lucky to get a very good development team. So the product has been since summer this year pretty ready.
Yeah.
So onboarded the first project, which was a great milestone for us, Japanese project, right? And investors across the globe. And now we are in the course of onboarding next issuers. And very important for us, where is our vision? Is that we would act like a settlement system, but at the same time like an ecosystem. So different, capital market participants can simply connect to us, like crowdfunding platforms, trading venues, conventional corporate finance houses. So some of this hypothesis, which we hoped would materialize really fast, like trading venues, has not materialized at all, because we still don't see. Well, there is Archives, I believe, this UK DLT-based exchange trading venue, but no others actually in Europe. There are, ATSs in US, some in Asia, but still very few. And we expected them to be much more in EU even. But who there are crowdfunding platforms with whom you asked for the news. We have a collaboration with Fundwise. It's Estonian equity crowdfunding platform. And that's where this hypothesis starts to materialize. Very interesting, actually, how you can provide value to the primary platform. And the second, as far as secondary, of course, we're working together with CoinMetro, in a sandbox in Montenegro. And then corporate finance houses. They show interest as well, because what we enable them to do is they have a nice network, but inability to connect. In other words, they have a good company, which issues, and the investors across the borders, they like the risk of that company. They like the risk profile, but they're simply unable to connect. You don't have the rails to pass the securities. And that's where we come in. So far, very interesting. So the last quarter looks very exciting.
Very good. Very good. Sounds good. Let's go in to see what kind of questions we have from the public here. We have a few that come in over the last few minutes, scrolling up. So we have Jet Fuel 12 from YouTube asking, are you seeing demand for STOs at present?
That's an excellent question, because STO has been the magic word since the ICOs were still there.
Yeah.
Because, I'm having, though being in a legal practice, I've been always in corporate finance. So I've been corporate finance lawyer, capital markets lawyer. So I was unable to put any valuation on those coins which were issued in the course of ICOs. I mean, it's kind of there was no Black and Scholes model that you could apply, or no weighted average cost of capital, or how do you put a finger on it? It's kind of
what's the hype worth?
I mean, it's kind of, but somehow people were ascribing, and already then people started to speak, what if, and that's how Ignium was born as well.
Yeah.
What if we could do the same beautiful flow of funds in the real securities place? So that's why STOs have been on the table all the time, but for some reasons, it hasn't really emerged. So the why is the good question, and there are so many articles being written, so many interviews being given. So why is it still there? And people have different, rationale. Many say that it has to penetrate the mainstream finance, right?
Yeah.
Make it to the Wall Street, make it to the main houses. But how? What's missing? Is the sales really missing, or do we lack a good salespeople only? What is missing? My own strong belief is that what is missing is the good infrastructure, which would be institutional investor grade. So custodians are there, but custodians alone will not do the trick, in my opinion. So that's why also, of course, we preach what we deliver, right? So we believe what is missing is the global settlement. So the answer is, Jet Fuel's question. There is a demand in STOs. you could say, there is a demand always for the good securities. There is demand for the investment opportunity. STO is simply a form of providing an investment opportunity, which potentially could be more liquid, because there is nothing wrong with the securities as they have been issued today. It's kind of just the infrastructure is expensive, but the main trouble, what I have been discussing so often with you, is liquidity, the lack of liquidity. So is there a need for STOs? Yes, there is a need for STOs, provided they are liquid. So I would say, and that sounds maybe a little bit harsh, I've seen STOs being done simply, on blockchain. You register a prospectus. It's a proper, full-blown public STO done. You sell it, and then what happens?
Nothing.
Absolutely nothing, right? So was that a good thing? I believe it was, because it was a step. Again, it was a step. It showed, right? It kind of they push it through the regulator and so forth. It was good work done, but was it good for the investors? Unless the investors were true blockchain enthusiasts, it didn't do much good.
Not much value.
Not much value, because so what do you do? What do you do now with those blockchain securities? You have even less liquidity than you would have with the conventional securities, right? But you still went through the same hassle of doing the prospectus and everything. So are STOs needed? And that's what I'm saying. It's such a deep and good question.
I think from a demand side, I think just like ICOs got a bad name because they, the kind of highlights all over the world were ICOs are fraud. And in reality, most ICOs that failed not due to outright fraud. They failed due to mismanagement. They failed due to any other reason that any business fails. And then STOs came out, and STOs were a glimmer of hope. And then because of the lack of infrastructure, which led to a lack of liquidity, STOs started to get also not the process per se, but the name, the moniker of STO started to also get kind of a bad name, not for the same reason, not for fraud or failure, but simply for the people started to wonder why should we do this? We're still stuck in an investment. We still can't get out of the investment. What's the reason? But as far as demand goes, I would have to say that Ignium and CoinMetro have a partnership for this digital securities marketplace that exists on CoinMetro's website. CoinMetro is about to do its own bond offering that starts on Friday. If you whitelist, hint, look at the bottom of the screen. But if you look at that, and we talk, and when anyone I talk to says, "Oh, well, I have a company that needs to raise money," "Oh, I have a friend that," so I think the demand can generally be there. The problem is that maybe it is at that extent almost a sales issue. Lots of the platforms that deal in STOs focus a lot on tokenization, not so much on the benefit to the end user of what that really means. They focus more on the tech, and people who need to raise money don't necessarily care about the tech. They just need to raise the money.
Exactly.
So
and I believe it's totally the answer that people don't need STOs. People don't need ICOs. People need to have funding to materialize these business ideas. And on the other side, investors need to have good investment opportunities and need to have liquidity. And STOs is simply, if you do it properly and you do it with the right infrastructure, that's the way to provide.
Agreed,
on a cost-effective and resilient manner.
So here, Jet Fuel again with, is it easy for companies to start an STO compared to an ICO?
Yes and no. That's a very long
Moving
answer.
on.
Next question. No, it's kind of a, why did I say STO? Definitely because ICO really became a dirty word in the end. And you went in such a regulatory gray zone or even black zone or risk zone, and nobody knew what to do, because the biggest challenge really with the ICO was that it's, what is it? Is it a security? Is it not? Right? If you even qualify, got a legal opinion, it's not, but maybe it is. Maybe somebody would view based on the investment risk, what it inherently embedded, it still will be a security. So therefore, it's a risk. It will be requalified, documentation not in place. There is kind of so much more anxiety about it. In the end, if you wanted to do it properly, STOs are much easier for that purpose.
Much clearer, much
clearer,
much more clarity.
Exactly. You know what you have to do effectively. So in this sense, they are easier. Why they are more difficult is
you actually have to do something.
You actually have to do something, and you also maybe had to do something with the ICOs. But another thing is they're much more challenging to sell.
Yeah.
Because one thing is to prepare documentation, but actually when you say a transaction is done when a transaction is closed. Money on the account, securities on the other account, and for that purpose, somebody has to sell the bloody stuff.
Yeah.
And
you're not selling dreams of 1000x and 100x.
Exactly.
You're selling a legitimate, well,
Exactly.
hopefully a legitimate underlying investment.
Exactly, where you can put your finger on the valuation and say, where do those numbers come from, right? Show me the DCF, right?
Yeah. Okay, let's see. We have LH. It says, people involved in cryptocurrency investments, we all look to strive and achieve financial freedom from investing in innovative ways. Why will this is a CoinMetro question. Why will CoinMetro be the leader? What is the ultimate goal? Okay, I'm not going to take a lot of time with this question because this day isn't dedicated to CoinMetro, but I'll go for it. So I think, look, I'll take this from a very high level without going into broad strokes about what we do and how we're so different. I think I've worked a lot of time in retail finance. So whether it was FX, whether it was even through a lot of sales, as well as now crypto. And in general, retail markets are underserved. That doesn't mean there's not a lot of participants selling retail services. It means that the participants that sell to institutions generally have they treat those clients in a much different manner. If you go to the private wealth section of your bank and then go wait 4 hours in line on the other side of the bank, you'll understand the difference. So normally there's a great deal of difference between services offered, access to information, access to different types of access to yield. All those things become they start to only go upwards and they don't come back down. So the people at the bottom and the people in the middle don't get the same they don't get the same return. They don't generate wealth like people at the top. So even from FX days into CoinMetro, the goal here has always been to try and trickle some of that back down, meaning trying to offer things like the investment marketplace in conjunction with Ignium that allow people to invest in things from 10 and 50 euros rather than having to have large scale tickets, gaining access to yield that they haven't had access to before, actually giving support. So when you have a problem, there's someone there to help you solve it. Actually, in the crypto space, actually being regulated, actually following protocols and actually following regulatory guidance and guidelines and being licensed so that you're assured that your funds are safe. You're assured that something like what happened at OKX recently wouldn't happen at CoinMetro. So there's lots of things. I think from a high level, it's just about trying to provide better service. That's it. And it's as simple as that. If you provide better service as a business, you will get market share. Simple as that.
Yeah. There is maybe I can take it a little bit from really Ignium's perspective.
Sure.
Well, the same question, what is on the screen. It's a great question. What is the ultimate goal?
Yeah.
Because ultimately, what matters? We have actually, we are just enablers, right? So what matters? On one side, really, you have investors, as the question states, get the financial freedom by smart investing and nice opportunities. On the other side here are the entrepreneurs who would like to, fulfill their ideas and, pursue their dreams, and they need funding.
Correct.
And if financial intermediation was working smoothly across the globe, how much more wealth and, not only on investor side, but also on the entrepreneur side, would there be, and so many positive side effects. So how much more wealth would be generated, so much more enterprises, either created, more growing, realizing their potential and so forth. So what's the end goal? I mean, wealth. People would have much more wealth and be
access to the ability to create wealth.
Yeah.
Where everybody should have the ability. Some people might not do it. I mean, everybody should have the ability to actually have the same access to those tools and the ability to create that wealth.
And there's a huge. Currently, we speak about EU. EU still, being the wealthiest region in the world. US having the best capital markets and the best access to the capital markets, but the rest of the world is actually, in a dark zone.
Yeah, a lot of us don't know the pain.
Right.
So,
So the bank is the only place where to go.
Yeah.
And they don't give you the money for entrepreneurship.
Yesterday I had an interview with Arthur from Paxful, so one of the co-founders of Paxful, and he told a story about they do a lot of business in Africa, and stories about fishermen that live day to day. So they make enough money to fish to be able to live that day, and they keep fishing. That's their lifestyle. But because they need capital to be able to get what they need to actually fish for the day, they go to the bank and they're given short-term loans where they pay upwards of 20% for one day. That the loan go out, get the fish, sell the fish, pay the loan off.
And the 20%, you mean?
To a standard bank. It's a like that is the
20% per annum or 20%
for the day.
for the day?
For the day. So a very small amount of money, I mean, I guess for most of us, but a considerable amount of money to this particular person. But at a bank, this is a established bank. This isn't a loan shark on the street. 20% a day. So those, just to put on the point that there's lots of pain points in the financial market that generally most of us that may be watching don't necessarily feel, but they're real.
Yeah.
So, okay, we'll take this one quick. I guess I think we already answered this, but will Ignium and CoinMetro succeed with their tokenized securities marketplace?
That's $1 million question. We hope yes.
$1 million question. Obviously, yeah, we both hope that it does. I think with enough perseverance and enough sweat equity, anything can succeed. And I think we're both companies are well suited to solve lots of those pain points. And if we do it and we continue to do it, the only possible option at the end is success.
And what we can do, what can we say about it? It's kind of we definitely do our best. What we can do, right?
Yeah,
it's all what we can do.
Yeah. You can't do more than your best.
Yeah.
I think unless there's like some performance enhancing drug for entrepreneurship. I haven't found it yet though. So
Have to keep research.
Yeah. Any additional companies tokenizing their equity or whatever via Ignium? If yes, when?
Yes, there are. There are companies lined up. As I said, there is a good collaboration with Fundwise, the equity tokenization platform. And there are new companies coming up, both in the new capital raises as well as tokenizing their existing cap table, for which Estonian lawmaker has made very convenient change recently that any share transfers do not have to be in a notarized form. So it's really paves the way or the path for the tokenization of equity. But also we have some bond issues coming up beyond CoinMetro.
Yeah.
So it's interesting.
Yeah.
There will be some.
I think there's
and the question is when.
Yeah.
It's fair to say within next month.
Very
next
cool.
ones. Yeah.
Very cool. Keep on the lookout. Ignium.io, also on CoinMetro's security marketplace. So make sure you guys keep a lookout. There will be more and more coming. That's for sure. From Bjorn, we have a question that came in. Will traditional markets create CM-like marketplaces? If yes, then which companies do you do this most probably? So if there's traditional companies that are going to, instead of mimicking tradition, well, to be fair, they do exist in traditional markets, but I'll let Reimo take the.
With traditional, you mean CoinMetro-like marketplaces?
So yeah, will traditional follow then alternative and start to create these kind of marketplaces where you can buy and sell securities?
I think they absolutely will, because that's what the new law is all about.
Yeah.
The new the piece of law in EU, which we started the discussion with, is exactly about enabling the conventional marketplaces to become more DLT based and start doing something what CoinMetro does. Whether they will get as user friendly, that's a different story.
Yeah.
It's a long way to go, because again, those companies have teams.
Yeah.
They have been serving their clients in a conventional manner, and let's see, nothing will change overnight. So as far as how they display their services, what kind of user experience they enable, who they serve in the first place, will they reorient from the institutionals to the retail where they described currently underserved? Not so fast. I think it's more likely that somebody like a major FX house maybe will start serving retail clients in a manner like CoinMetro does. Get an appropriate license, because they have those huge client bases of millions and millions.
And all retail.
All retail. But existing exchanges, the way they have been currently set up, my guess it will take years and years and years.
Yeah, I would comment.
Unless a new CEO comes with a vision.
Yeah, with a new vision.
With a new vision, like saying, let's do something like CoinMetro does.
Yeah. I think in as I've seen, like with FinTech over the years, is new FinTechs tend to, when they're very small, tend to look at traditional, try either find pain or find something that they're doing well and do it better or solve the pain point. So that's how like kind of the alternative markets start to come to take shape. But once the alternative market starts to gain speed and starts to gain awareness and starts to grow, taking market share from the traditional side, traditional adapts to take what's best of the alternative and pull it into their own ecosystem. So, you know, I've heard millions of times, well, this conversation happens all the time, like, especially for Bitcoin maximalists and people that are generally, let's say, have kind of grown up in the crypto space rather than grown up in the traditional space, assume that crypto is going to take over traditional markets. And I think that's rather almost impossible in the sense that traditional markets are vastly larger than the crypto market. But the traditional market, as we're seeing PayPal and all these companies that are now starting to come into the fray, and that's more on, let's say, the crypto side for now, but you're guaranteed they will come in on the security side as well. As soon as they start to see that they're losing market share, they have the people, the money, the manpower, and the ability to basically do exactly what the smaller market players are doing.
And another place where the change can happen already, and we see that happening, is that somebody doing it in a new way gets acquired.
Yeah, exactly.
And provided the old corporate BS doesn't run over them, still the team remains in place, has a decent liberty of pursuing that vision by then having access to the totally new level of the client base. That's what may be a major accelerator as well. But we have seen so many occasions in different sectors where those, you know, innovative startups that right, lead the future of the tokenization.
We covered it a bit.
I mean, it's kind of I would say, because there are major challengers for EU, because part of this, you know, new piece of law will EU lead. EU definitely, with a new piece of legislation, was putting itself on a map. EU was not even in a map, I would say, beforehand. There are countries here, there, like Estonia, I would like to say, or very blockchain savvy and tech savvy, and having several.
It's basically US, UK, and everybody else when it comes to
Asia, right?
Asia as well.
Japan, you know, raising voice very clearly. You know, of course, China with this kind of a CBDC, which we didn't discuss at all. But the EU was clearly putting itself to the map. I wouldn't dare to say, even though I would like to believe that they will lead the way. Let's see, because still it's kind of one thing is a piece of legislation, another thing is a culture of innovation. Which I have to admit is still stronger in US
and Asia,
in Asia, and they have they've been embracing major innovations in the past and in a very recent past. So.
And the forced innovation in parts of Asia, right? Something the government does something, you just use it.
So let's put it this way. Also in EU, there are innovative startups.
At least two.
At least
two.
Well, or you will see them in the podcast at least, sometimes. But we'll do our best what we can do. So to bring EU the leader.
Very good. All right, everybody. That's it. That's. Thank you, Reimo Hammerberg from Ignium for stopping by the office and sitting with us for a bit and answering questions. Great questions from the people out there. Thank you very much, guys and gals, for that. And stay tuned. Next couple of days, we're going to have more and more of these interviews. We have another great one coming up tomorrow. Make sure you check that Facebook Live. You're going to see it pop up over the next 24 hours. If you're following us on Twitter or you're following us on YouTube, make sure you give a thumbs up. Click on that little heart button. Show some love. We appreciate it. And by the way, we're going to pick a winner. Somebody's getting 1,000 XCM. If you don't know what that is, go ahead and tag me on Telegram or tweet me on Twitter at Kevin Mirko, and we'll sort you out. So thanks again, guys. See you again here tomorrow. And have a great rest of your evening, day, or wherever you may be in the world.